to make sure you're here in the right place. We've got 4 different sessions, each running for about 30 minutes before we break for lunch. There's going to be the first one, access management at interchanges, then access versus mobility, managing roadway systems for functionality and safety. 3 components to a successful access design, working together with local government, and the Monona Drive case study, utilizing access management tools. My name's Terry Genske. I'm a land surveyor with Strand Associates with a strong love of access management, so I'm also here to learn a few things. I think what we'll do is, the way they had this set up was to save 5 minutes at the end of each presentation for questions, but it sometimes seems to flow better. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and if we can hear you, fine. Otherwise, I will run the mic around, and so you can hear maybe a little better. First speaker is Gary Sokolow, formerly a member of the Florida Department of Transportation, recently retired. That's very cool. And he was a senior transportation planner for most of his career, and let's welcome Gary.
Well, hi. One of the first things that Terry asked me is he didn't think he had my bio. And I said, well, I'll just do my own bio, because bios are usually kind of weird. They tell you like where you went to school. I hardly remember where I went to school. But the other thing is I went to Florida State University. And somewhere along the line, I lost the sports gene. I have no interest in sports, and so if you like the Seminoles or you're a Gator or whatever, I'll know nothing about what you're saying. I have never been to a football game. I went to one basketball game when I was 19 years old at FSU. I know nothing about sports. I have no school spirit. I have no team spirit. However, I decided that there is a reason to have team spirit, and I have decided that I am going to now be an Auburn fan because they have some of the best access management research. No, this is it. I'm Auburn now, all the way. And I don't know if you saw Hugo Joe's presentation about wrong way entering off of freeways, and I've decided to get an Auburn jersey with Hugo Joe's name on the back of it. That's my. That's going to be my team now, but it's going to all be based on access management research. Anyway, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Interchanges are extremely important, obviously, and access management around those interchanges is even more important than your typical corridor. Like I said in the lightning round, I'm going to talk about just some basic concepts here that will help you decide to make decisions that will make whatever interchanges you have last longer. Also, it's not listed here, there are some places where you shouldn't build interchanges, and this is something that I talked to Dr. Joe about, about these Parklow interchange configurations, which tend to have a problem with the wrong way driving. And I said, well, why would you ever build a Parklow? And he said, well, sometimes there's just so much land on one side owned by a McDonald's or something that it's too expensive to buy. And I say, well, maybe that means you just shouldn't have an interchange there. If you can't build something safe, I mean, the interchange is your decision. It's not like a driveway. And that's an important distinction here, that interchange is not a right of access. It's a very important decision to whether even have an interchange. And the other thing is that we're finding out more and more that the way interchanges have been designed at the at grade street level have been really detrimental to pedestrians and cyclists. So hopefully learn some things about how not to kill people. As I said before, interchange areas have an extremely important function. They are the gateways to our community. Interchange decision, whether you build one or not, is one of the few times in your careers where you can take land that's $10,000 an acre and turn it into $3 million an acre based on your decision. So you better protect those areas. Unfortunately, looking at bad examples is really easy everywhere, including Florida. Obviously, the red portion is the off-ramp, and just look, this is extremely common. I'm assuming that Florida is not the worst place in the United States. We got ramps, we got driveways on ramps. That's what it looks like. And again, not only is it an important area to protect because of the importance of the land use around interchanges, but the confusion of the unfamiliar driver is even more pronounced in interchange areas. I am sure that these situations of very tight weaving by unfamiliar drivers and familiar drivers is familiar to you. One thing that Terry said that I didn't restate, I would rather you ask questions of me as we go along, just because I really do think that's better for our communication with each other. And the other is I'm much more interested in your questions than I am getting through with these slides. I don't really have that many. I will stay on time, but I really love to hear from you. And so interrupt me, go, hey, you know, because I'm looking here. Christine Williams, who is here and has given a few presentations and has been one of my gurus, one of the people who has helped me grow in the connection between access management and land use. And I'll give a call out to a presentation she will be doing on land development regulations that support access management. She did this for the state of Florida in 1995. Yes, I was there. We had a dramatic impact on local governments from that time because of this guidebook that she wrote, and she just updated it this year. So please, if you can attend her session, attend it. If you need to know where to get a copy of it, I can get that to you. But anyway, Christine, in one of the courses that she's done for me, just, as I said, it is really easy to see bad things happening at interchanges. And that is one of the reasons, because there are a lot of unfamiliar drivers out there. In addition to that, they are not very bicycle and pedestrian friendly. A lot of times they were never designed for that, but as the land use develops around these virgin interchanges, the entire nature of that area changes. Okay, I'm going to go back to the 1960s when I was in high school at a place called Lee Road in Orlando, Florida. And there's an interchange there at Lee Road and the Interstate 4. This is a great example of what not to do. This is one view from the interstate looking down. This is the exit ramp. This is a driveway. And if you look closely, there's a traffic signal there. There's a major roadway called Wymore Road that goes across it. To give you a different view of it, there's Interstate 4. Here's the off-ramp. Here's the business, or at least at the time, Denny's, and Wymore Road. Now, in Florida, our access management standards are fairly tough, but you can look at them. Driveway spacing is 440 feet in most areas, and directional median openings are quarter mile. Yes?
Where does your 440 come from?
The 440 actually is a percentage of a mile. It did not come from scientific analysis. When we created our standards, we just used portions. Well, we knew that signal spacing, half-mile spacing, was supposed to be ideal. And if you come to my presentation on complete streets, you'll find out maybe it's not ideal. But at the time, we thought it was ideal. And land development splitting was done on the mile basis, and then we just kept splitting it down to, mostly the subdivision of land. And we did have one scientific number, and that was 230 feet for the minimum spacing. And that was based on the ability to stop and maneuver at a certain speed. But the rest of it is kind of like, was pretty off the shelf.
With Wisconsin similar, right?
Yeah, and let me say, our standards are fairly tough. They're so tough that I don't know whether I would do that again. I mean, I was there when we created it in 1988. I'm not sure whether that was the wisest decision for the standards. I don't know whether posted speed limit might have been an easier way and a more direct way to come up with standards than having to classify our entire roadway system, which did take about 3 years. And during those 3 years, we weren't doing as really great access management. We were waiting to classify our roads. Lesson learned. So knowing our standards are tough, you just take a look at this one interchange area, and you can see there's only 40 feet between the off-ramp and the driveway. And you see it's only 220 or 250 feet from the off-ramp to the signal. It will never work. Or, as Virgil Stover has told me numerous times that I loved, he said, any design will work until you put traffic on it, okay? And it is so true. I mean, when these people designed this in the 1960s and I was going to high school up the street from here, I'm sure it worked really well, but that's not real anymore. So, back in the 1960s when they designed this and they saw Wymore Road was 220 feet from their off-ramp, they should have made a decision right then and there. you know, what are we going to do with Wymore Road? Or maybe we should have this interchange someplace else. A couple interchanges north of Lee Road on Interstate 4 is the most busy interchange in the state of Florida. It's Interstate 4 and State Road 436 is in the city of Altamont Springs. Let me go a little closer here on it. As I said, the busiest interchange in the state. Notice where the driveways are on here. Notice where the traffic signal is. That's another one that's about 300 feet. Maybe they didn't know it was going to have that much traffic in the 1960s, but they should have had a clue, you know, on that. Yeah, State Road 436, when I was a young kid, was called the truck route. How many people have had an experience with that? Oh, we're going to build a truck route so people don't have to go downtown. We're going to, you know, take all that traffic off the main road. We're going to put it on the truck route. Well, anybody who knows anything about State Road 436 now, you know, trucks are 5% of, you know, what 436 did was open up a heck of a lot of land to develop, and it did. And that's one of the reasons there's so much traffic on it. So, we do understand at Florida DOT that it has Interstate 4 through Orlando has outlived its design many, many years ago. So they have something called the ultimate plan, which means I think that they're never going to do anything more. I'm not sure. But this is what the current plan looks like. It's under construction now. This is a little bit more of a plan view. I'm going to show you something I thought was fairly interesting. Now, a while back, they purchased the access rights to this quadrant a long time ago. But for some reason, this time around, they could not afford the access rights to this little gas station. So they're going to continue even into the ultimate, have this driveway here. That's okay. The most important thing they did was take that traffic signal and Wymore Road. Remember Wymore Road? It was all the way back at Lee Road, too. Wymore is a north-south road that runs pretty parallel to I-4 through the Orlando area, or the Winter Park, Altamont Springs area. They decided they cannot have that signal anymore. Great. So what they did is they didn't close Wymore Road, they just stopped the crossing movement. So that took some good designing to do that. Let me also point out that since they did cut Wymore Road off from being through, they, now that I'm retired, I don't say we, built or connected through a number of collector streets to provide that same interconnectivity that existed before, you'll notice. And what you don't see is that the city of Altamont Springs, which is, in my opinion, one of the best suburban cities in the state, with their own money built bridges across I-4, knowing that our interstates, though providing great accessibility for people on them, has split up our communities, made it harder for them to be connected, and they built with their own funding bridges across. Now, one way to make sure when you build interchanges that you protect that area around it is to have what's known as a limited access right-of-way line. This is where you either purchase or you've traded with property owners to have a significant, let's say, over 1,000 feet, even though Federal Highway has a 300 or 400 feet minimum. You got to go way past the minimum. We had a major development on the in the southwest area of Florida that when the interchange was planned, we were able to get over 1,000 feet of limited access right-of-way at the time. And it has worked pretty well because this is what it looks like today. So you can see there is a nice separation of where the traffic signals are. And even though Florida DOT at the time did not have anything in their design standards on this as clear, I found that Georgia DOT had what I consider a really nice one, where they did mention what they think would be appropriate limited access right-of-way. Okay, what's the problem with the interchanges, pedestrians, cyclists? This is Interstate 75 at University Boulevard in Sarasota. Back in the day, our thought was the more grand the swoop, the better the operations. What you did was, if you had people go this way, then they would merge with the traffic, people wouldn't slow down, everything would be fast, everything would be efficient. Again, it worked great until there was traffic on it. And so over the years, we have made improvements. You can see that at one point, we did signalize that movement. And so these people now have protected right turns. And a few years after that, not only do we have the protected movement, but they've finally saw fit to put in sidewalks. So we really need to be thinking about our most vulnerable users at interchanges. One of the reasons is because as you head either onto a freeway or off of a freeway, you may not be thinking about pedestrians. What you're thinking about is getting your car to the place where you want to go as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible. But the problem is, again, we have encouraged, if it's not a grand sweeping right-hand turn, we're all trained to think that the free-flowing right, keep things moving, make everybody happy. Big problem, especially with cyclists. I'm back here at Lee Road and Interstate 4, near where I grew up. Turns out this is one of the highest crash places for pedestrians and cyclists in the state. And the problem is pretty clear to see. You're coming off the freeway, and you want to turn right, and you're not thinking about the person who's coming at 10 miles an hour on their bicycle in that direction. It is really easy to hit them. And in the same vein, as traffic queues up, you have the problem of cars blocking the visibility of cyclists and pedestrians going across. So what we're really trying to do is encourage less grand sweeping, free rights, a more 90-degree angle. If you need to know or want to know more, there's great stuff on this about pedestrians at interchanges. I have links in the PDF presentations that you can get if you've downloaded them. And I encourage you, if you're interested in this, that I'm just glossing over the surface of this. But this is one example where they've taken a free right and turned it into something a lot more friendly for the pedestrian on an off-ramp. And you can notice the difference. The pedestrian used to have to cross this much, and now they cross that much. So another link to an excellent publication by Federal Highway. And that is my presentation. So do we have time for any questions? Probably not. I'm glad you asked questions. We do? Okay. Yes, sir.
So you had kind of a general guideline of 1,000 feet between the ramp and the next access.
The next, yeah.
Do you vary that based on the functional class? And what would it be for like a local street versus a minor to principal arterial?
Okay, so the question was, would we vary our desired 1,000 feet of clear area from an on or an off ramp? And the answer is, if it is not a major road, we shouldn't have an interchange there. On the other hand, as you can tell, we're living in a situation with lots of retrofit, and that's the hard part. I have to say that Florida DOT has done a really good job, spent a lot of money buying up properties near these interchanges when we are making improvements. That's why I was so surprised to see that driveway remaining in the final plans, because we'll just buy up the properties in those areas. It's that important.
Well, most interchange off-ramp, they don't have that. Most interchanges, I have looked at the signal location to the off-ramp location there. Very rare you will see there more than 1,000 feet distance.
That's what I'm saying, is that we still are building new interchanges. I know that. The office I worked in, that was the office that approved new interchanges. And sometimes the best thing for us to say is no interchange here. Have it someplace else. Maybe it's not that important here. If you have to build something that is just unsafe and going to lose its usefulness in 5 years.
Well, I like the standards that you set there for the 1,000-foot distance for rural and 600-foot urban. I think that generally is what's followed in Ohio. What I didn't like was the 300-foot minimum. That the 600-foot should be the minimum. 300 foot's just too close.
Yep. We've had all these questions in the beginning because Federal Highway has these, like a 100 in urban areas, 300 or 400, and they're, for every one of those, highly, based on no traffic being there. So, yeah.
Okay, let's thank Gary for his presentation.